Pushan Sharma, who's the Director of Research, CRISIL, Market Intelligence and Analytics, and Abinash Verma, former Director General, ISMA, who is also the promoter of grain-based ethanol plant in Bihar. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us today. Well, first up, there is a lot of ambiguity on the ethanol made by the B-heavy molasses. Now, circular clearly states that supply of ethanol from the existing offers received by the OMCs from B-heavy molasses will continue. But what happens after the existing offers are over? Pushan, you can go ahead first.
Yeah. So I think there's still some ambiguity around this. The existing B-heavy and C-heavy contracts, we understand that they will continue to hold good, but from today onwards what we understand is that ethanol cannot be produced from cane juice, and those contracts are slightly circumspect at this stage.
All right. Also, what is the nature of contracts signed by sugar mills with these OMCs? Are these contracts signed for 6 months, 1 year? Could you give us an idea on that?
So these contracts, depends on the arrangement between the sugar mills as well as the OMCs. Some of them could be short-term, some could be slightly long-term in nature, right? So it totally depends on the contractual arrangements between the organizations.
Sugar companies use sugarcane, right? Cannot use sugarcane juice or syrup for ethanol with immediate effect, which means that mills will have to resort to B-heavy or C-heavy molasses for ethanol production. What is the cost differential between sugarcane, B-heavy molasses and C-heavy molasses then going to be?
Right. So if you look at the price of the end product, it's about 65 rupees for the cane juice variety, and about 60 rupees for the B-heavy molasses, and about 50 rupees for C-heavy molasses, right? About 65% of the ethanol production happens through the B-heavy route, while about 25% is from cane juice, right? So these are primarily the two modes which dominate about 90% of the ethanol production.
Right. Also, Mr. Verma, I'll get you in there. I want to ask you about the fact that, there's a lot of ambiguity, like I mentioned, around the ethanol made from B-heavy molasses. The circulars clearly states that the supply of ethanol from existing offers received by OMCs, from B-heavy molasses is likely to continue. But what happens after these existing offers, are over?
See, I don't think there is any ambiguity after today's notification from the Department of Food and Public Distribution. It clearly says whatever offers have already been given by the sugar companies to the oil marketing companies, they can continue to produce ethanol from those B-heavy molasses. And therefore, I don't think there is any ambiguity for the next 1 year, that is 23-24 sugar season. They can very easily produce whatever quantity they have offered, and the oil companies have accepted.
And also, Mr. Verma, do you expect the policy change to be temporary in nature? By when do you expect the supply of ethanol made from sugarcane juice or syrup to resume?
See, we'll have to understand why the government has taken this decision. And as mentioned by your presenter about a few minutes back, he did mention about the number, about the quantity of sugar cane and sugar production this year. The sugar production has dropped because Maharashtra and Karnataka have received less rainfall, and the production of sugarcane and sugar is going to be much less. There are various numbers in the market. ISMA is talking about 31 million tons of production. There are international trade houses which talk about 30 or 29 million tons also. And if the domestic consumption is going, and this is after diversion of about estimated of about 3.5 million tons of sugar into ethanol prior to this decision today. And therefore, if you're going to have a very balanced kind of domestic production and domestic consumption, if the domestic production is going to be about 29 million and the domestic requirement is going to be 28.5, it's certainly going to put pressure on the prices and the supplies. And therefore, the government would like to be on the safer side and kind of control the diversion of sugar into ethanol. And that is exactly what they have decided, that don't convert the sugarcane juice into ethanol. And that, as per my estimation and the bids received by the OMCs, will give almost about 18 lakh tons of more sugar as compared to if that was diverted into ethanol. And if that will increase that 29 or 30 million tons to about 31, 32 million tons as a requirement of 28.5. And therefore, and we will get a much better picture by, say, middle of January or end of January, what the actual sugar production is going to be. Once the government realizes that the production will be 31 million or slightly more, then probably the government will look at opening up the sugarcane juice to be made, converted into ethanol.
Right. So, Mr. Verma, what is the margin differential between the supply of ethanol to OMCs and the supply of sugar, to the market likely to be?
It will all depend how the sugar prices move from here. I believe that the ex-mill sugar prices in some parts of the country had gone up to 40, 41 rupees at the mill gate. And the price of ethanol from sugarcane juice, which was about 65, 66 rupees, was kind of, I wouldn't say good enough for the sugar mills to really convert too much of sugar into ethanol, because the return from sugar would have been better. Now, with slightly more sugar availability in the country, there might be kind of a correction there. And the sugar mills will probably produce more sugar because they'll not be able to use that sugarcane juice to produce ethanol. So I would say that the balance is more towards sugar production, because the sugar prices are much better than the ethanol prices. Let us also remember one thing, that the government has still not announced the ethanol prices for 23-24, which started on the 1st November 2023. And whenever the government announces that ethanol price, it could be probably a rupee higher or similar, or a couple of rupees higher as compared to last year. If it remains at that level, the balance will be towards production of sugar.
And finally, Mr. Sharma, I'll bring you in. What kind of impact do you foresee on ethanol volumes for FY24 and FY25? Will India's ethanol blending program take a backseat then?
Right. With this restriction that is being put in place, we're seeing that the ethanol volumes are likely to fall by about 20%. They were about 4.7 billion liters last year. And for this sugar season, we're expecting them to go to around 3.8 billion liters. And that definitely will have an impact on the ethanol blending program. The target, of course, is 20% by 2025. Last year itself, we had achieved blending rate of about 12%. Now, given this year that the ethanol production is likely to decline by 20% and petrol consumption is going to increase by about 5%, the blending rates may be lower than 10% in the year 23-24.
Right. On that note, we'll have to let you go. Thank you so much for joining us, gentlemen.
Thank you.
All right. Meanwhile,